The internet didn't just stop, it froze. Because this wasn't messy tea, this wasn't shady captions, and this definitely wasn't reality TV drama as usual. This was the kind of revelation that makes people put their phones down for a second and whisper, "Wait, what? Trina Braxton. Divorce papers filed." And a bombshell accusation that detonated the entire narrative overnight. According to what's exploding across timelines right now, Ashley Braxton allegedly revealed that Trina's husband assaulted her, an allegation so severe that it instantly transformed a quiet marital split into one of the most disturbing family crises the Braxtons have ever faced publicly. At first, fans thought Trina's divorce filing was just another private decision being handled quietly. But then, Ashley spoke, and everything changed. The mood shifted from curiosity to shock, from gossip to disbelief, from what happened to how deep does this go? Because once allegations like this enter the conversation, there is no such thing as a clean storyline anymore. Every past interaction gets re-examined. Every family moment feels heavier. Every silence feels loaded. What makes this situation even more unsettling is the timing. The divorce didn't come before the revelation, it came after, which immediately sent the internet into overdrive, asking questions nobody wants to ask, but everyone is thinking. Did Trina know? Did she just find out? Was this being handled privately until it couldn't be anymore? And most chilling of all, what happens when allegations like this surface inside a family that has already lived so much of its pain in public? Social media erupted into chaos. Support flooded in for Ashley. Shock rippled through fans of the Braxtons. And suddenly, this wasn't just a divorce story, it was a reckoning. Because when accusations this serious come from inside the circle, the fallout doesn't just change relationships, it changes everything. And if what's being alleged is true, this is only the beginning of a much darker chapter. The moment this story surfaced, the tone shifted instantly from curiosity to alarm, not because of spectacle, but because of the severity of what was being alleged. Trina Braxton filing for divorce would normally register as a painful but private family matter. But when Ashley Braxton publicly came forward with an accusation as serious as sexual assault involving Trina's husband, the narrative didn't just change, it collapsed into something far heavier, far more disturbing, and impossible to treat as ordinary celebrity news. It's important to be clear from the very beginning. What has been revealed is an allegation, not a proven fact. But allegations of this nature carry weight regardless, especially when they come from inside a family that has already endured public trauma. And the internet felt that weight immediately. This wasn't gossip that people rushed to debate for entertainment. This was the kind of revelation that made timelines slow down, comments grow cautious, and even the loudest blogs hesitate before hitting post. Trina's divorce filing didn't initially raise alarms. There were no dramatic statements, no explosive interviews, no obvious warning signs. If anything, it seemed quiet, restrained. But once Ashley spoke out, that quiet took on a different meaning. Because the timing raised questions that no one wanted to ask, but everyone felt forced to consider. The filing came after the allegation was revealed, not before. And that sequence alone reframed the entire situation. Almost immediately, people began asking whether the divorce was connected to the allegation, whether Trina had just learned something devastating, whether she had known privately and was now acting, or whether the revelation forced a decision that could no longer be delayed. None of those questions have confirmed answers, and speculation in situations like this is dangerous. But the silence surrounding those questions made the situation feel even heavier. Ashley's decision to speak publicly changed the gravity of everything. Coming forward with an allegation like this is never simple, never clean, and never without consequences, especially when it involves family. And that's what made the reaction different from typical celebrity scandals. People weren't dissecting motives. They were absorbing impact. Because accusations of sexual assault don't exist in a vacuum. They bring fear, anger, grief, and disbelief all at once. The Braxton family has long been known for navigating grief and conflict in the public eye. The loss of Tracy, past family fractures, highly emotional storylines played out on television. But this moment felt different. This wasn't about disagreements or estrangement. This was about safety, trauma, and accountability. And once those words enter the conversation, the stakes rise beyond image or reputation. Social media reflected that shift almost immediately. Many fans expressed support for Ashley, emphasizing how difficult it is to come forward, especially against someone connected by marriage and family. Others urged restraint, reminding people that allegations must be handled carefully and responsibly. But even among those urging caution, there was a shared understanding that this was no longer just a divorce story. It was a crisis. What made this even more unsettling was how quickly people began re-examining the past, not to assign blame, but to look for context. Old family moments, public appearances, interactions that once felt normal now felt heavy in hindsight. That's a common response when allegations like this surface. People look backward, searching for signs they might have missed. Not because they want to accuse, but because they want to understand. At the center of all of this is Trina, whose position is uniquely painful. She is both a sister and a spouse, roles that collide brutally in situations like this. Filing for divorce in the wake of such an allegation doesn't automatically answer questions, but it does signal seriousness. It suggests that whatever conversations are happening behind closed doors are not being treated lightly. And that alone speaks volumes. What hasn't happened yet is just as telling as what has. There has been no public attempt to dismiss the allegation as drama, no loud counter-narratives, no aggressive denials blasted across social media. That absence doesn't prove anything, but it does indicate that this situation is being handled with a level of gravity that goes beyond public relations. This first phase of the story isn't about conclusions, it's about impact. About how quickly a family dynamic can be upended when an allegation of harm is brought into the light. About how divorce, once framed as a personal decision, becomes part of a larger reckoning. And about how public attention complicates what should be a deeply private and careful process. As this unfolds, one thing is already clear. This is not a story that can be consumed casually. It involves real people, real trauma, and real consequences. The internet may speculate, but the truth, whatever it ultimately is, will not come from comment sections. It will come from careful investigation, legal processes, and the courage it takes for those involved to navigate something this painful under a public microscope. This chapter doesn't end with answers. It ends with a pause, a collective realization that something serious has been alleged, that a family is in crisis, and that rushing to judgment helps no one. What comes next will matter deeply, and how it's handled will define far more than a divorce headline. As the second phase of this story unfolded, the atmosphere around it grew heavier, not louder, not messier, but more solemn. Because once the initial shock passed, people began to understand that this wasn't a moment for hot takes or speculation. It was a moment that demanded restraint. Allegations of sexual assault are not gossip. They are life-altering claims that carry legal, emotional, and psychological consequences for everyone involved. And as more people processed what Ashley Braxton had publicly alleged, the focus shifted away from curiosity and toward gravity. What became clear very quickly is that this situation forced the Braxton family into an impossible position, navigating an allegation of extreme harm while living under public scrutiny. Ashley's decision to speak out regardless of what the legal outcome may ultimately be marked a point of no return. Allegations of this nature don't fade quietly, especially when they come from within a family. They demand to be addressed through serious channels, not social media commentary. Trina's divorce filing began to look less like a relationship decision and more like a protective one. Not a statement of guilt, not a confirmation of facts, but a signal that something irreparably serious had occurred. In situations involving allegations of abuse, separation is often not about conclusions. It's about safety, boundaries, and creating distance while truth is examined. And many observers noted that Trina's actions appeared consistent with someone responding to a crisis, not participating in spectacle. Behind the scenes, speculation swirled, but there was also a noticeable shift among fans and commentators who urged people to slow down. Many reminded others that allegations must be handled with care. and that both the accuser and the accused deserve due process. Support for Ashley did not automatically translate into condemnation of Trina's husband in the absence of legal findings. And that balance mattered. It reflected a growing awareness that believing survivors and respecting legal processes are not mutually exclusive. What also emerged in this phase was a deeper understanding of how traumatic it can be for survivors to come forward, especially when the alleged perpetrator is connected to family. Speaking publicly carries risks: disbelief, backlash, scrutiny, and emotional re-traumatization. That reality shaped how many people responded to Ashley's revelation. There was less debate, more listening, less entertainment, more discomfort. And that discomfort was appropriate. At the same time, attention turned to the silence surrounding the situation. No dramatic statements, no defensive interviews, no attempts to frame the allegation as a misunderstanding or rumor. That silence did not imply admission or denial, but it did suggest that the matter was being taken seriously behind closed doors. In cases like this, silence often indicates that legal counsel is involved and that public commentary could interfere with investigations or proceedings. Another layer that complicated this phase was the Braxton family's history with public grief and trauma. Fans recalled how deeply the family was affected by past losses and conflicts, many of which were documented on television. But this situation was fundamentally different. It wasn't about disagreement or estrangement. It was about harm. And harm changes the rules. It removes the option of just working it out publicly. Conversations also began forming around the responsibility of the public. Many people questioned whether constant speculation, reposting, and commentary were appropriate at all. When allegations of sexual assault are involved, public discourse can unintentionally cause further harm to survivors, to investigations, and to families trying to navigate an already devastating situation. That awareness led to a noticeable softening of tone across many platforms. Importantly, there were no verified details released beyond Ashley's allegation, no legal documents shared publicly, no official statements from authorities. And that absence reinforced the need for caution. Allegations are not proof, but they are not nothing either. They exist in a space that requires seriousness, patience, and respect, not conclusions drawn from fragments. Trina's position remained especially complex. As a sister, she would be processing Ashley's pain. As a spouse, she would be confronting an allegation that fundamentally changes the foundation of a marriage. And as a public figure, she would be doing all of this under a spotlight she did not ask for in this moment. Filing for divorce did not answer every question, but it did signal that the situation was being treated with urgency and weight. This second phase didn't bring clarity, it brought sobriety, a collective understanding that this story could not be consumed like entertainment, that whatever the outcome, there are real people carrying real trauma, and that rushing to judgment, in either direction, risks compounding harm rather than preventing it. As this chapter continued to unfold, one thing became increasingly clear. The next steps would not be public. They would be legal, private, careful, and the most responsible thing observers could do was resist speculation and allow space for truth to be determined through the proper processes. This story at this stage was no longer about headlines. It was about accountability, safety, and the long, difficult road that follows when an allegation of this magnitude enters the light. As this story moved into its third phase, something significant happened, the noise faded, and what remained was weight. Not speculation, not outrage, but the heavy understanding that this situation had crossed out of the realm of celebrity news and into something far more serious and irreversible. Because when allegations of sexual assault surface inside a family, there is no clean resolution, no satisfying update, no version of events that leaves everyone untouched. There is only process, pain, and the long shadow such claims cast over every relationship involved. By this point, it had become clear that Trina Braxton's divorce filing could no longer be interpreted as a symbolic gesture or a PR move. Regardless of what the legal outcome may eventually be, the filing itself represents a boundary. A separation not just of marriage, but of proximity, trust, and safety, while extremely serious matters are addressed. In cases involving allegations of sexual violence, separation is often the first responsible step, not because guilt has been determined, but because the situation demands distance while truth is examined through appropriate channels. What stood out most in this phase was the collective shift toward restraint. Fans, commentators, and even blogs that typically rush toward speculation noticeably slowed down. There were fewer theories, fewer what-ifs, fewer attempts to connect dots that should not be connected publicly. That shift reflected an understanding many people come to too late. Allegations of this nature are not puzzles for the public to solve. They are matters for investigators, legal systems, and the individuals directly involved. Ashley Braxton's allegation remained exactly that, an allegation, and that distinction mattered deeply here. Responsible voices emphasized that believing someone enough to take their claim seriously does not require convicting someone in the court of public opinion. Likewise, respecting due process does not mean dismissing or minimizing the courage it can take to come forward. Holding both truths at the same time is uncomfortable, but necessary. Trina's silence during this phase became less a mystery and more an expectation. There are moments when public statements are not only unhelpful but harmful. Anything said prematurely could complicate legal processes, re-traumatize those involved, or be misconstrued in ways that serve no one. Silence, in this context, does not indicate avoidance. It indicates gravity. It suggests that what's happening behind the scenes is being handled with seriousness rather than spectacle. Another sobering realization during this phase was how limited the public's role truly is. There were no verified updates, no official charges announced publicly, no statements from law enforcement made available to the general public, and that absence is not unusual. Investigations involving allegations of sexual assault often take time, move quietly, and prioritize confidentiality to protect all parties involved. The lack of public information did not mean nothing was happening. It meant the process was not designed for public consumption. The Braxton family's history added another layer of complexity. This is a family that has endured profound loss, grief, and conflict in the public eye. But nothing in their past prepared them or the public for a situation like this. This wasn't about reconciliation or estrangement. It was about confronting an allegation that fundamentally alters how safety, trust, and family bonds are understood. And those reckonings do not play out neatly or quickly. At this stage, conversations began centering on impact rather than outcome, on how allegations of sexual violence ripple outward, affecting not just the individuals directly involved, but entire families, communities, and support systems, on how survivors often carry the burden long after headlines fade, on how spouses and relatives are forced to navigate impossible emotional terrain while also making practical decisions that protect themselves and others. Importantly, there was also a growing recognition of the harm caused by sensational framing. Many people pushed back against treating this as shocking entertainment, emphasizing that language matters, that headlines matter, that how stories like this are discussed can either contribute to a culture of care and accountability or one of re-traumatization and spectacle. That awareness marked a critical turning point in how the story was being received. What did not happen in this phase was resolution, and that's appropriate. Allegations of this magnitude do not resolve quickly, and they should not be rushed to conclusion by outsiders. Truth, accountability, and justice, whatever form they ultimately take, require time, investigation, and careful consideration. Anything less risks doing harm rather than preventing it. As this chapter closed, one truth stood firm. This situation is bigger than celebrity, bigger than divorce, bigger than public opinion. It is about an allegation of serious harm and the responsibility of everyone involved, including observers, to treat it with the seriousness it deserves. That means resisting speculation, avoiding definitive claims where none have been legally established, and allowing space for the appropriate processes to unfold. This story will not have a satisfying narrative arc. It will not end with a dramatic reveal or a viral moment. If it moves forward responsibly, it will do so quietly, through legal systems designed to uncover truth rather than feed curiosity. And while the public may never know every detail, What matters most is that the people at the center of this are given the dignity, care, and due process that situations like this demand. This is not a story to follow for entertainment. It is a reminder of how real harm intersects with public life and why restraint, empathy, and responsibility matter more than ever when the stakes are this high. Before you move on, take a moment because stories like this deserve care, not speed. What's unfolding here isn't entertainment, and it isn't something to consume casually between scrolls. It involves a serious allegation, a family in crisis, and real people whose lives are being permanently affected. How we respond matters. If you stayed through this, it means you understand that there's a difference between awareness and exploitation, between listening and speculating, and that difference is important. Conversations around allegations of sexual harm require restraint, empathy, and responsibility, especially in public spaces where words travel fast and consequences last long. If you choose to engage, do so thoughtfully. Like this video to support responsible coverage that prioritizes context over clicks. Comment only if you're adding care, clarity, or compassion, not assumptions. And if you subscribe, it should be because you value measured updates, not sensationalism. Any future information that emerges should be handled with the same seriousness this moment demands. Missing context can cause harm. Rushing to judgment can cause harm. Silence can be necessary, and so can patience. Staying informed doesn't mean feeding rumor. It means understanding when to pause and let proper processes unfold. This isn't about taking sides. It's about respecting the gravity of what's been alleged and recognizing that some stories require us to slow down, not speed up. If you're here for that kind of conversation, one rooted in responsibility, not reaction, then you're in the right place.